the two extremes in the generations. One looks at, say, the young end and feels, they're not really trying. They don't want to do a full week. They certainly don't want to stay after hours.
And I am guilty of looking at previous FDs and thinking, well, yeah, you are clocking off 15 minutes early today. Why aren't you putting in the extra hours? Why don't you just do that little bit extra to show me how good you are? Do you know?
What's really interesting is when the psychologists, and again, generalization, bell curve distribution, when they look at the baby boomer era, they are the most financially secure and the most depressed of all the generations.
One thing I've heard a lot recently is, follow your passion, follow your dreams. And if you basically do that, then money will look after itself. And, I don't know if that is a Zoomer thing. Because for me, it's kind of just like, listen, you need to find something that's going to pay the bills. Hi guys, and welcome to the final episode of Season 1 of Dentistry Unmasked. Now, through all the episodes that we've done this season, I've really learned a lot, and I've saved this episode till the end because the topic of this conversation is pretty much the reason why I started doing this podcast in the first place. So we have an NHS dental service which is in crisis. We have an abundance of NHS jobs and supposedly an abundance of dentists, but those jobs are not getting filled. Younger dentists in particular not wanting to take these jobs. Many more experienced dentists have actually moved into private practice, and the younger dentists also want to just start off in private practice. So the whole purpose of this podcast was to understand the nature of the situation and really try and get to the bottom of why the attitudes of the younger dentists are different towards, NHS dentistry to what they were before for dentists of, say, my generation. I'm 20 years qualified. So this conversation was a great one for me because it kind of just tied it all together. We've got Tony Kilcoyne, who was my original scheme advisor when I first qualified 20 years ago for the Dewsbury scheme in the Yorkshire Deanery. So he's a baby boomer. I am just on the tip of Generation X, not quite a millennial because I don't have that technological upbringing that a millennial would have had. And then we've got Imaan Khalid, who joins us again. She did a podcast with us talking about her experience in dental school, but she is just on the tip of being a Zoomer. So we've got three generations of dentists here, all discussing, what motivates us to work, what we look for in a job, what we look for in a work-life balance. So, have a listen. I'd love to hear what you think as well, see if you agree with some of the topics raised. But I must say, for me personally, I'm much more sympathetic now towards, millennials and Gen Z because, they've got a completely different way of looking at life and different challenges and different wants and needs from their job. So, where we find ourselves now in the NHS recruitment crisis, I think, let's let you make up your own minds what you think should be the solution going forward. Enjoy the listen, and hopefully we'll see you for Season 2 in 2024. Have a good one, guys. Tony, welcome back.
Hi, Imaan. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Welcome back to Dentistry Unmasked, and thank you for agreeing to come back again and giving us your valuable time. So last time we were talking, and we could have carried on talking for another 3 hours because we had so much to talk about. But one thing that we talked about off air afterwards was, the difference between the generations and, the attitudes of graduates in my era, your era, and Imaan, who's kindly has been asked to stay back and join in on the conversation, I should say. But what we wanted to boil down to and what we were talking about last time was, this generation right here is the most stressed generation that we have.
Yes.
And the expectation, and, we had a revealing conversation earlier about, what the expectation is about working life, what the expectation is about how many days a week we want to work, how much time we want to spend with our family, having days for admin. Whereas I was willing once upon a time to work 7 days a week to make a living,
you
8 days a
entertain
week,
that.
surely.
If there was an
being
eighth
lazy,
day,
just doing
if there was
7.
an 8th day, we would have worked it. Yeah? You just think that's nuts.
Even God rested on the 7th
Right.
day. That's what they said.
Even God rested on the 7th day.
You're saying that on
man,
Thursday afternoon.
honestly, my generation, dogs from my friends, colleagues, peers, everybody, we were just ready to just get out there and work.
Just wanted to make the money, didn't you?
Absolutely, we did. And you see, this is what we were talking about last time. As a generation, that was the norm. That's what we all wanted to do. To somebody like you, it's kind of just like, that sounds nuts. Why would you ever want to do that?
Like for me, I say, because no more than 1,000 UDAs per day that you work, and no more than 4 clinical days a week is what I suggest.
And I can see the wisdom. I can see the wisdom in that. I can see the wisdom.
If you work effectively, you can make as much money in 4 days as you could do in 5.
No, I see the wisdom. Maybe.
There is a study. There's stuff out there that says that, isn't there?
There's a study
stuff
on
out
it.
there.
There's a study on it.
Study.
I know I'm buying it. There's stuff out there. I couldn't remember if it's study. There is something.
No, but I think what it boils down to, and this is what we were talking about off air last time, which is why I said, Tony, we need to talk about this again. Come back on air.
Sure.
Was you're very, very good at teaching. And telling, because this dynamic that you were just talking about the fact that, you have a trainer who is of generation, say, X, and then you have a trainee who is of generation, what we're calling it now, Generation Z, right? Millennials, whatever you want to call it. Please, let's tidy up some of this terminology and then tell us what is the difference between the generations in terms of aspirations.
He wants me to do the day's presentation in
an
2
hour.
minutes.
I mean, maybe half an hour.
So the thing I would emphasise is you'll read all sorts of things about generational differences.
Yeah.
And particularly, you'll hear the term millennials because they get a lot of stick. And what you have to understand about anything that's population-based is there's a bell curve distribution. So when they talk about, aspects of different generations or observations about different generations, you must always caveat that with. So it's a bell curve. Yes, 2/3 might be sat under there.
Yeah.
You've got tails at either end.
Mm-hmm.
And what I find fascinating now, because I'm looking even further ahead at things, is how some people can be of a chronological age of one generation, but they behave as though they were brought up in another. So not everyone's backgrounds or cultures or experiences are the same. So that's why you have the 2 tails. Mm-hmm. So just bear in mind now when I sort of give some brief resumes of things.
Yeah, of course.
They are generalizations. There will always be exceptions.
Generalizations are good because the generalizations will help us understand, help me understand.
So they're summaries.
Absolutely.
They're summaries. But so if you go right back to what are called the baby boomers, where they were born kind of before 1965. I know that's last century, isn't it, for a start? Yeah, so before 1965. The reason they're called the baby boomers is, the wars had happened, economic recoveries had happened. They kind of arrived at the best time. Property was cheap. Jobs, you could swap jobs for what you wanted. There was enough money over to save into pensions and have a little bit of fun. But there wasn't international travel or the global aspects we have now. So that could have been the seaside at Scarborough. But, that was luxury at the time. They're now, let's say, in the 60s. And other generations look at them and go, oh, well, you had the best time. Mm-hmm. Your houses cost a few thousand quid, You've got them all paid off now. You've got either a final salary pension or a pretty darn good pension. You've got this spare money. Every time I see cruises, it's 2/3 full of older people because you can afford to go off for months now. And great. But you've also ruined our environment. You've put all this pollution in, making all this money in industrialization of the world. You've sold your property for God knows what, $500,000 when you bought it for
pennies,
10,000. Yeah, relatively. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of have that little bit of resentment. But if you look at how they sort of were brought up, the culture they were brought up in, it was like work hard, maybe play hard a bit, but definitely work hard. It was normal to work late. It was normal to take paperwork home and do it at the weekend and not be paid for it because it was seen as, so you committed to the job, the company, the whatever. And when it came to a promotion, those sort of things, although not written down, were personal bias and taken account of. Well, he or she does more than average, they do it all right. Let's promote them because that's what we want. Someone's going to work even harder for us. And so their family life suffered, their personal life suffered, very stressed, very used to a hierarchy, boss at the top, they're maybe somewhere in the middle or at the bottom. If someone asks jump, you ask how high. You don't ask, well, why am I jumping? Isn't it better to go over here? So that is what they are used to, almost militaristic style. And just to come sort of right to almost sort of the other end, Generation Z at the moment, who were born 95 to 2012. So they're now the 12-year-olds to 26-year-olds. If that the Generation Z, nicknamed Zoomers. They've been brought up with online collaboration, working together in teams, sharing knowledge. In the baby boomers era, that's like, what, you'd even like revise together and you'd even share ideas and all. And it's like, oh, that's cheating. You had to do it on your own to prove you had the self-worth and knowledge and da-da-da. And so they seem very blinkered to the current Generation Z at the moment, okay? Also, Generation Z, what's a house cost now? What's the deposit? Most people can't afford that on their own. So you're looking at both partners working, whereas back in the baby boomers' day, the husband worked, and they could, and you only needed one wage, and that was fine. Yeah. But now, how can you afford life if, say, both aren't working part-time? Sometimes, especially if you've got aspirations, you want a decent house, reasonable area,
and then
half decent school. Yeah, well, the expense doesn't go away, does it? No. And you're qualifying with debt. You have to pay for your dental education, your living expenses, and so on. Yeah. Whereas the baby boomers, they got free education.
Grants, indeed.
They even got paid to go. Yeah. But only 1 or 2% were allowed into university, you see. So that, so there's pros and cons. But can you see how at the two extremes in the generations, one looks at, say, the young end and feels, they're not really trying. They don't want to do a full week. They certainly don't want to stay after hours. And they're just not as committed as we were. And then you put the goggles on the other way, and it's like, oh, well, you had it all easy. You're financially secure. So, of course, you can do what you want and go on cruises and stuff. But what's really interesting is when the psychologists, and again, generalization, bell curve distribution, when they look at the baby boomer era, they are the most financially secure and the most depressed of all the generations.
The baby boomers.
They lack hope. Yeah.
Who do? Sorry.
Baby boomers.
Are the most depressed?
Yeah.
That's shocking to me.
It is, isn't it?
It's the Zoomers who are the most depressed.
Yeah. It is. And it just goes to show it isn't all about the money then, is it?
No.
It's about the quality of life.
But it's also then like, are the Zoomers more open?
And the studies to show it. I know, you're looking at me like,
I know
that can't be right, because surely they've already been paid off and they've got all this time.
Not at all. This is why I'm here. I'm a sponge. I'm learning. I want to hear all this. And it just smashes a lot of common preconceptions.
Do you think it's because the Zoomers are more open to talk about mental health, etc., compared to baby boomers who would probably sweep it under the carpet?
There's other factors involved, because it's definitely, and I am taking the two X. There's other generations in between who have different characteristics. Again, on the bell curve distribution.
Let's talk about me soon.
The bell curve distribution is significant enough to note it in studies.
Yeah. So
you can say like 2/3 show this trend, and it's a statistically significant trend. Yeah. But of course, there's exceptions either way. So I'm kind of on the borderline of baby boomer stroke Generation X, but I'm at the older end. Okay. But I grew up when there was no internet, no Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And yet I love all of that internet connection. So
the dial-up tone, that rings a bell.
Don't pretend you know what that is.
I do know what that is.
No, really?
I do know what that is.
Oh, well.
That noise, that used to come through.
Yeah, don't tell people that. You're giving things away.
You're not quite a Zoomer then, huh?
Not quite a Zoomer, no.
You've just gone just slightly
it's
over.
It's one of those things, like when you ask a millennial how would they do an action to answer a phone, they do this. Whereas where you ask a Zoomer and they do this, and they said, oh, how would you take a picture? And then they do this, and then the other ones take a selfie like this. There's a video of two separate people doing it and showing what they do. So it's just how much change there actually is in just between millennials
Yeah,
and Zoomers.
it's very interesting. Yeah. But so the thing is, both generations, on the extremes, see the other as having an advantage that's unfair, and they see the other as somehow to blame for something. No, but they do.
Absolutely.
So, and again, I'm generalizing. I'm not saying everyone's like that, but there is this tendency, because you've come from such very different starting points, and the culture of how you all interacted is very different.
Mm-hmm.
So at the younger end, they love collaboration, working together on projects and so on. But maybe the attention span's a bit short. So they need a break and then start again. Need a break, start again. Finish at 5, ideally 4:45. None of this, it don't matter if we run over till 6, does it? That would be, and the trouble is, if you have baby boomers, shall we say, in charge of Generation Z, and there's this almost expectation, but not the communication of that expectation, then suddenly it's like, well, they're leaving 5 minutes early. And no matter how well they've performed that whole day, there's a little bit of, well, they're lazy, they're taking shortcuts, and in their world, the other way around, it's like, well, I was given a project, we got it done, we collaborated well, we had a little team meeting, we went off, did our separate bits, had a nice little break, came back, got it sorted, all put away for the weekend. Don't we reserve this extra 15 minutes as a reward?
Yeah. It's interesting. I saw that. I felt that. I could see that when I was a trainer myself.
Okay.
And, maybe, again, I wasn't switched on to this. And I know that we did have the training as part of this. But still, emotionally, I wasn't switched on to this. And I am guilty of looking at previous FDs and thinking, well, yeah, you are clocking off 15 minutes early today. Why aren't you putting in the extra hours? Why don't you just do that little bit extra to show me how good you are? Do you know? So there is a generational thing that look like you want to kill me.
No. I think I'm a bit, because I'm there before my boss at work in the mornings, and I'd probably leave after my work. Boss at work. But that's
the bell curve.
Yeah,
you're not in the middle of that bell curve.
So maybe you're more Generation X than
I don't know, maybe. But
but people will have traits. Yeah. Because you've got personal values. So along with generational differences, you've got personal values, stage of life, do you have family, don't you have family, all this sort of thing. You have the culture from which you came and the people that you mixed with then and now.
Oh, yeah.
All that has an effect. It does. And so that's why there's a bell curve distribution. However, as a generalization, you can say, so the trend is for Generation Z to have these traits or tendencies. And the generation for the baby boomers or late Generation X is to have this trend. What's important isn't sort of much pointing out the differences. It's recognizing that, saying, right, there needs to be better communication here to express different expectations at the beginning. So I don't know if you remember in foundation training, we always had this initial, what do you expect from each other in dental training?
Yeah.
And some of it would be technical, like turn up on time and fill out your portfolio and be nice to patients or whatever.
Portfolio's bane of their life.
But some of it was also kind of what you're comfortable with, what you're not so comfortable with. Think about how when you need help, I always think it's better for the FD to be in control and bring the trainer in.
Yeah.
And I also think it's good to bring in the trainer and let them see good things you've done.
Yeah.
Because otherwise the staff and all the team go, oh, trainer's going in, something must be wrong. Because they only ever call them when there's something difficult or wrong. And sometimes you just want to go, what do you think of this? And so it's not all, again, it's just, you don't want to build up that negative reinforcement. So to me, communication, open door policy, all of that improves. Now, you're still going to notice trends because you can't just make them go away, but they're not going to bother you because they're not a barrier anymore.
Yeah.
There's something that you've now negotiated through whatever your communication pathways are, and you're open enough to address it with each other. So then if you did have a concern with an FD and you had good communication channels, you wouldn't mind pointing something out, and that, let's say, oh, we noticed you come 2 minutes before the first patient's in. Now, I appreciate you come a long way or whatever. Is there anything we can do to help with that? Because I always ask staff to come in at least 15 minutes before or half an hour before, and I don't want them looking at you and resenting that they're coming in. So that's my concern as a trainer. how do you feel about that? And that would be something they have never even considered, because they don't even get to play with that aspect, because they don't run a practice or have staff or whatever. At the same time, they may say to you, look, I finished my patients, completed my portfolio. I even went around, did some of the things. I came and observed you twice. And, it's 1:45, and if I could leave there, I can get an earlier bus home, because not everyone has their own car, or whatever. And you might go, yeah, but I'll make everyone stay till 5. So there might be a little, not just compromise, but understanding and give and take. So the better that communication is, the better it overcomes what are also generational barriers if you leave them as barriers. That's the secret, really, is to know that they exist and do something about it.
Hi guys, are you thinking about getting into dental implantology? Well, if you didn't know, I'm one of the founding members of Unique Implant Training. Unique Implant Training is now in its 5th year, and we are now fully EduQual accredited to diploma level, which is an 18-month diploma, the only 18-month implant diploma currently in the UK. So if you want to begin your implant journey, please don't hesitate to give us a call. Find us at www.uniqueimplantraining.co.uk. We look forward to seeing you soon.
I think if you don't discuss about the issue, it's just going to carry on being an issue, probably get worse at some point, and then it erupts, and it's worse doing it that way.
No, I think you're right, isn't it? Because sometimes small things you
nip
think,
it in the bud.
Yeah. I think there's a little bit of, I don't want to make a fuss about that, because it's not a big thing.
I've definitely been there.
But
where
because
it
happens
on and on
and
on.
Regularly, irregular, the frustration, you're right,
Exactly,
it builds up, doesn't it? And then it's like a
It
volcano.
It can be from either side as well. Like, there's something that your trainer could do to piss you off or something. And it's just like, do you know what? I'd just rather say it,
But the question I would always ask in that situation is, do you think they're doing it to deliberately annoy you?
Sometimes it felt like that, honestly.
Exactly. You will let your imagination... But
that's your imagination telling you that.
It is.
I get that. But, that's what I mean. This is the whole point of this, is just like understanding people, understanding the difference between the generations. So
who has time to make you feel annoyed? I mean, I don't think that's the top priority, to be fair. Think of it that way.
No, I get that. But like when you're in that environment, because at one stage I was the principal of 3 practices. Yeah. So in the sense,
that's so 7 days a week.
So that's where the 8th day was needed. Yeah. So in the sense, just managing people is difficult enough, and then this is the reason why this podcast exists, because recent times I've come across young dentists who just don't wish to work in the same way, and this is what it's all about. So this is, I need to understand this. I need to understand Generation Z, basically. But, before we even go there, I mean, you've already told me a little bit about it. Let's talk about me. Let's talk about my generation.
This is a counselling session now, guys.
That's it. What's Generation
X?
I
might have to let you deal with this, because, I don't know if I've got enough time or expertise.
Tell me about me. Go on.
I don't know. Where are you? Are you
I'm
early Generation
I'm
X?
81 born.
Oh, right. So you're quite on the cusp of, 81 born. So 20 years later, you're entering the world just as the millennium bug was hitting. Yeah. Now, do you remember the millennium bug? We had the adverts.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, all the computers are going to shut down.
It was going to
because they've only ever had 2 digits to 99.
Yeah.
When it goes to 00, all electricity will stop, society will collapse. And for years before, they were saying, get your computers and systems millennium bug ready and da-da-da. And I remember watching the telly, this is how bad it was then, of, like New Year's Eve, and it's like Sydney and Tokyo are the first because they're on the other side of the world, so their timeline goes 1st of January 1st. Let's watch their firework display. We were all watching midnight New Year's Eve. Let's watch all the lights go out and see total darkness, because that's what's going to happen to us 12 hours later. And we can, run out and buy toilet rolls and bottles of water and tomatoes or whatever the shortage is. And
nothing happened.
And nothing happened.
Nothing happened.
All the lights stayed on. We watched it and we're like, oh, but this had built up for ages. So there was an anxiety there. You would have been analog before then.
Yeah.
Wi-Fi, the internet had only just got going.
Yeah.
Never mind Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi came
got
after
my
that.
first email address at my first year university, because we needed one. We were allocated one. I hadn't come across email before then. We didn't have internet at home. social media, Facebook was something that came in 2004 after I graduated. So I didn't grow up with that. So it wasn't integral to us keeping together, as in like communicating with friends. We just had phones and we text each other, and even that was a new thing when I was at college, so
press the button loads of times to get a letter.
I had a pager, and that was like amazing. The
Walkman as well.
Yeah, we're amazing.
She's just ripping you to pieces here, pal.
Sure, it's cool. This is what it's all about. I'm used to it. I've kind of just developed immunity to it. But so that's Generation X, right?
Yes, well, and there's another thing where the trouble is they try and split it up where there's a transfer over or whatever. But in general terms, your typical characteristics would be you're fairly self-driven. Your parents might have had some hardships just before that, because that's when we had all the interest rate cuts. We actually had a 3-day week and power cuts and all this kind of thing. So you would have had the emphasis of being self-sufficient, working hard, being adaptable and flexing. So that's a big difference to the baby boomers, for example. So you would have taken any job. You would have worked 2 jobs in 2 different places and not moaned about it, because you were just glad that you could earn and learn and do all this, which is probably why you took on 3 practices at one point. But anyway, nothing wrong with that, because that's what people do sometimes. But so you did that. You didn't moan. You slightly thrived from it. But yeah, the X generation, they quite like, give them a task and give them the freedom to get on with it. Don't say this has to be done by then or this or that, because that could be out of sync with what you do. So they tend to be pretty good that way. You're at that level of, some people do have, maybe not just the parents become dependent, but paid for childcare came in then. And that might have been important for work or looking after the kids.
So that wasn't
so that
a luxury before?
No. The baby boomers, one person could earn everything. Family or neighbours. Kids are going in and out of each other's houses.
There was a bit of that in my childhood, actually.
So you're in that, do you know what I mean? But as you transfer over, and it depends, your neighbourhood, your culture, what that was like. I mean, my heritage is Irish. My God, they were in and out of each other's houses. You had no privacy. Sometimes you get them in the morning, you think, who the hell are these people?
Like Indians,
Well, it is a bit, innit? It's like, your house is my house. It's like, no, it ain't. Get out, But it's like, you're just the young person. You'd have no say in this. But it was also nice because there was always someone to keep an eye on everyone, and if anyone was ill or whatever. And I think that's very missing now from the culture. A lot of old people here feel on their own. The relatives are too busy working. They haven't got time. If they can visit them twice a week, it's like, oh, you're doing well. And it's like, oh, that's not as good. So we're all busier. Yeah. And that adds to the stress, whatever generation you're in, but it depends where you started from. So you probably have this, work ethic of get on with it. Slight insecurity, so you worked harder just so you had some in reserve. I'm not saying you, I'm just saying the generation.
This 150%.
Is that Tia?
And
no. Honestly, he's speaking to me.
If some of these are to the listeners, ticking boxes, that's normal. In just you, that's normal. And so you're juggling with a lot of things. But you don't, as a generation, collaborate and work together as well as X and Y, the millennials, and as Y and Z, the millennials and the Zoomers. They collaborate a lot better because they started out like that. And they were better connected with the internet from the beginning, you see. That's the difference. They will have I remember my kids, who are now in their 20s, they would be 14 or 15. They'd be like, yeah, I'm talking to whatever in Russia.
MSN, stuff like that.
You're just saying that, aren't you? So, yeah, I remember stuff like that. No, they were on programs that have now become mainstream that I hadn't even heard of. My kids started introducing me to cryptocurrency. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And they're like, oh, it's tokens on a game, and you can buy this and you can buy that, or you can buy a shield, sell a sword, whatever. Tokenization of things. Now I look back and I'm thinking, oh my God, they were so ahead of what is now kind of got into the news. And okay, people maybe mess with it and don't understand it and lose money, whatever. But this was going on. But because it was globally connected, they were connecting with the world. I wasn't. Yeah. I thought I was good having Wi-Fi and just connecting locally. So their collaboration and connectivity is far greater than ours was, and sometimes is. And in fact, one of my middle kids now has gone to America to live, lives there, and his 5 best friends there, he met them all online. And they go out, well, they go duck shooting at the weekend and all this sort of thing. So, he works in town, sells car parts, because I was trying to convince them, well, I offered them all the opportunity to do dentistry. And it just didn't set them on fire. Would that still be the case?
Would you still do it now?
Sorry?
If you had kids now, would you still...
Oh, I would always expose them to it. Because I think you've got to love it to put up with all the stresses and strains and hassles that go with it. And unless it already sets you on fire, then I think the negative stresses might actually win. And I wouldn't want to put anyone through that. Yeah. But again, we were lucky we could let our kids be exposed to, I don't know, music, sports, different academia stuff.
Not in an Asian household.
We talked about that briefly last time as well, didn't we?
Yes, and interestingly, culturally, they might go, oh, to be successful, you have to do this. And there's a narrow lane they want you to go down.
Yeah, I was never exposed. My parents do something, do whatever you want, but as long as you're financially stable at the end of it. So I just chose dentistry after.
Yeah, but that's the but, innit? As long as
it's financially
as long as
it's financially stable, which I feel like is a must, really, in any profession.
Well, it's sensible, and I think definitely I've heard the advice of find something you like doing, and find something that someone will pay you to do. Because if you like doing it most of the time,
it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah. Well, it feels less like work.
You see, and therefore, one thing I've heard a lot recently is, follow your passion, follow your dreams, and if you basically do that, then money will look after itself. And I don't know if that is a Zoomer thing, because for me, it's kind of just like, listen, you need to find something that's going to pay the bills. And you need to knuckle down.
But if you've got that passion
now you see his Generation X trait of being slightly insecure.
Yeah.
Get a job, make it pay, get 2 jobs if you have to.
Yeah.
Is there. That's in the background always for you.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't matter. You could sit here now and say, Tony, I've got 10 million in the bank. It's fine. I go, yeah, it is. But those traits will still influence you.
Yeah, you're so right. And, I don't mind being open and honest because it's not uncommon knowledge. I am not the owner of 3 practices anymore. I only own 1 now. I am financially secure.
I'm not saying you got 10 million either. I was just exaggerating.
It's 20.
Is it? Yeah,
haven't got 10 million. I really haven't. But no, I am the most financially secure I've ever been. But in the back of my mind, Tony, honestly, I feel like I could lose it all tomorrow. And I feel like that as well, especially since COVID, because, we were talking earlier about has COVID changed things? Yes, it has. And you were saying, hasn't that made you relax more and appreciate life more? No, it hasn't. It made me think, man, you know what? I could still just lose everything. If I can't work tomorrow, my business can't open. Like we couldn't open up for 3 months during COVID. I could lose everything. So I need to have a rainy day fund and I need to have something I can rely on.
You'd still have the skill set to be able to, you'd still be a dentist. You'd still have the skill set. You probably wouldn't earn as much.
She's talking like a Zoomer now.
But no, this is why you're here. This is so interesting. But it's
because guess what?
Yeah.
Zoomers have more optimism.
Right.
You pessimist.
Generation
but the
X
psychology behind it, you've just said it, Tony.
Yes, absolutely.
You said it how there's that anxiety there that one day you could have nothing. And that is me.
Sure. Now, I think everyone has these fears and worries sometimes. All kinds of things, you have a nightmare about, I don't know, someone you love or a family member suddenly not being there, or, people have these intense moments sometimes. But 24 hours later, that should go. Do you get the idea? When it sticks, then it's either a generational thing, an experiential thing. If you ever watch Dragon's Den and stuff, the guy, Peter...
Which one?
Oh, what's his surname? Anyways, he's one of the more famous ones. He's been bankrupt about 4 times. Mm-hmm. He's one of the most successful business people ever. And it's interesting when you look at the dynamic of optimism. Optimism isn't just a blind... oh, it'll be fine, follow your dreams, it'll all work out. That's a nice thing, to write in a card. Yeah. But it lacks the detail. And what optimism means is if you struggle, you come across a hard time, something unexpected happens, you recover and then you try again. And it might be the same thing in a different way, or it might be a totally different thing. And if that doesn't work, you try again and you try again and you try again. I mean, I don't know about you. I don't know if I could go through 4 bankruptcies and then still come out with being one of the most successful multimillionaires investing in other people's businesses.
Well, I think if we bring that to our profession, let's bring it to our profession now. So we talk about pessimism. I would never put myself down as a pessimistic guy, but Generation X is pessimistic. We need to have this rainy day fund, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. This is a Zoomer who's optimistic, right? But now when we start looking at the clinical aspects of things, I'm very, very willing, and I always have been, to just give it a go. And if it messes up, you know what? We'll learn from that experience. Whereas the newer generation of dentists is not really willing to take risks. You know?
You're right. Now, another trend with millennials is they're sometimes called the Peter Pan generation, because they're perceived as staying in their childhood for longer. They resist making decisions for longer. They tend to get married later and have children later. And again, some of the older generations might look at that as being, indecisive, unsure. You can't get them to commit or make a decision. But actually, they like to think about things more, work out. The worst thing you can do to a millennial is give them 3 choices, because they'll be like, I have to go away and work out the pros and cons of each one. And then, maybe ask my friends, do a little survey, come back to it. Is there anyone who's done well with this or better than that? Like a year later, they still haven't made up their mind, because they don't want to make a wrong decision. So they want to get things right first time. Is again, as a trend, bell curve distribution. This is very much instilled in them. And some people think that's because their parents were actually the baby boomers. So when they had the money and cars came in and everything, they got driven to school. They didn't walk to school or ride a bike with no helmet to school like the baby boomers. Yes. Do all the health and safety dangerous stuff. They wrapped their children in cotton wool. They delivered them to school. What time you finish school? I'll pick you up. Right, you're going to a club or a group meeting. Fine, I'll meet you after that. Don't be late. Where are you? Who are you seeing? What are you doing? So they became kind of wrapped up. And some people feel they're a bit either self-centered, can't make decisions, take a long time to commit.
Yeah.
But when they do, they do.
Yeah.
But they want to do it once and they want to do it right. So they won't do this. Oh, well, we'll just give it a go and see how it goes. And if it doesn't quite work out, well, we'll learn from it.
And on top of that,
they don't like that.
The fear of litigation on top of that.
There's all of that. In dentistry, there's all of that. But in life, they want to pretty much make the right decision. So they're much better off with a binary decision where one decision is obviously not good for them.
Yeah.
That's their ideal.
Right.
Now, life's not always like that, but you will find that's whereas, Generation X and the baby boomers, you give them 3 options, they'll in their head work out which one, and they'll go, well, you know what, I'll try this, and then if not, I'll come back and maybe I'll try the other.
Yeah.
Millennials won't do that. On average, they won't do that. They'll wait, they'll delay, they'll analyse, and they need something to make one or more clear.
And where does that come from? Does that come from the parenting of that generation?
It's a little bit where because they've been wrapped up in cotton wool, in theory, and because they've been, delivered to school and looked after, and they've never really wanted for anything. If they wanted an iPad, they got one when they came. They have become a little bit self-centered relative to the baby boomers.
Okay. Relative to the baby boomers.
Relatively self-centered. And so they think, well, what's best for me? And they'll ponder that because they don't want to get it wrong.
Yeah.
So it's that fear of getting it wrong that holds them back. Not, well, isn't it great? We might think, isn't it great? You got 3 choices. Especially when it comes to careers, it's like, hey, you could do dentistry, you could go off be a mechanical engineer, you could go do an apprenticeship, be an electrician, because you know what, you're probably going to earn just as much now because there's a shortage of these. And, you give those 3 choices to like a millennial career, and they're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And they'll go off research, they'll ask, and they'll get stuck and they'll make a decision a little bit later than most would.
Yeah, definitely. I can relate to that.
Whereas you might go, well, I'll give dentistry a go. If that don't work out, I'll go sideways and be an electrician.
No, honestly, I can so see this, and from my experience, because I finished being a trainer, foundation trainer in 2019, I think.
Okay.
And
just before COVID.
Just before COVID.
He didn't want to take me on because we had this conversation.
Because I knew that she was going to qualify. She wanted a job. I was just like, I'm not taking her on. No way. I need to finish this now. No, not really. Obviously not really. No, but just like what I did notice that towards the end, it was a case of I just knew maybe around the 2008 to 2012, 13 mark that they're going to do VT, and then they're going to become an associate. Very rarely they're going to go into hospital, but they knew what they wanted to do. And then slowly, it was a case of, well, I'm not sure if general practice is for me. I might want to go into specialism, or should I go back into hospital? What should I do? And it was really very much
got three choices.
It was just like, it was a very, very big thing about the next step and a lot of indecision. And again, there's not criticism, it's just an observation. But there was a lot more, well, at the end of foundation training, I don't really know what I'm going to do. I just don't know what I'm going to do. And I'm just like thinking, to me, it's quite obvious. Just go get a job, you know?
That simple, yeah?
Yes, it is. And this is it. And then you're looking at me now, we're having this conversation, it's kind of like that simple, yeah? And it's just like, for me, it really was that simple. Yeah. And this is the interesting conversation that we're having. That, you know,
that's the different generational approach.
Just a question to you, Imaan.
Yeah.
So you talk about being committed to the profession, doing 7 days a week. So would you say that I'm less committed to the profession?
No, not at all. I'm not saying.
That's just a question because I was asking because I don't feel like working 4 days and doing all the extracurricular. I don't think I'm less committed to the profession.
No, not at all. I don't think you're less committed to the profession.
Yeah.
What I'm observing, and this is what we were talking about last time, is the bulk of the dental workforce, or the bulk of the dental services in this country, is the NHS. And now we're having this recruitment crisis because we have these big multi-surgery practices which are like, 5-6 chairs in it. They've got like UDA contracts of 30, maybe 40,000 UDAs. And, historically, my generation would happily go in and do 6, 7, 8,000 UDAs a year. I'm not saying that's right. We had a conversation with Alex Asquith about, getting into trouble doing loads and loads of UDAs and cutting the quality of your dentistry. So I'm not saying that is the right thing to do. But what I'm saying now is, we have a generation now of dentists who are qualifying and they don't want to work like that. And rightly so. Power to you. We don't want you to work like that. But we've still got the problem that the NHS, dental practices have those contracts and they have to deliver those contracts, So something's got to give somewhere.
And to answer your question, because he was being very nice and polite, I think baby boomers and Gen X would view you as being lazier than them.
Yes.
I'm not saying it's right.
Yeah.
But it's a perception thing.
Yeah.
And because if all they're measuring is time in, time out, number of hours in a week, less than what they do at your stage in career or any stage.
Yeah.
Well, of course it's going to fall short because it's just technically at lower hours. But it was really interesting how you just slipped it in a sentence there. It's like, given all the extracurricular activities I do.
Yeah.
And so your job is to communicate that to the older generations who either, might be part of the people who you work with, line managers, or even just family members,
for me, that makes complete sense. Is I'm saying what I was trying to get across is that people of my generation, people of even my cohort in university, me doing all this extracurricular, I was like, why do you do all of this? So if anything, I was considered doing more so than anybody else in my year. So it's like it's quite. I just wanted to see the narrative.
Your question to me was, are you committed?
Yeah.
I think you're committed. Of course, I think you're committed. Do I think you're lazy? I don't think you're lazy. Not at all. It's kind of just.
I've got here before you today, just saying.
And if he did, it wouldn't matter.
It would,
Actually.
Yeah. No, I don't think you're lazy, but genuinely, and I think this is a generational thing, and I talk about this with many, many dentists who are my age, that the younger generation do not maybe want to work as hard as we did. And, it's please, it's not criticism.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I was going to say
it's
that
an observation.
Working hard in the number of hours, but mentally it could be I'm trying to be more of a perfectionist and not just give something a go. So for me, that's more.
No, you see, that's an interesting, because it is this, and we've got this dilemma in dentistry. You mentioned it with the UDAs: quality versus quantity, isn't it? And that's always, it's like a tug of war on us, really. Where do we go? And the NHS is all target driven. That's why UDAs are so bad. That's why even Parliament's own Health Select Committee, even in 2008, condemned them and said targets are bad in healthcare. This is why, because it's quantity, not quality. And yet, Department of Health's kicked the can down the road because the Treasury loves it, basically. But it's at our expense, either our health expense or the stresses it brings.
Yeah.
And I don't see our younger generations coming through
Yeah.
who look at this objectively. They're coming in at the bottom rungs of the profession.
Yeah.
They're seeing all the people who've been languishing on waiting lists for 2 or 3 years, high needs for 3 years.
Yeah.
It's untenable. It
Yeah.
just is. Now, of course, a lot will get done and actually is being done for them, but they don't see them still doing that in 20 years' time. They aspire for something far better qualitatively. And what the younger generations have absolutely nailed is that quality of life and work balance.
Yes.
They recognise the importance
Yes.
of that, and they're determined
Yes.
to make that work.
Yes.
So when people say you can do anything you like, they want that so much. That's ingrained in their generational output.
Yeah.
Whereas for us, we sacrificed ourselves for the extra hours and quantity because A, we thought that was the right thing to do, and B, we were a bit insecure.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to build up, a buffer zone or whatever, but we were insecure because of what had happened before, and so on. So what's interesting is the young generation's the most indebted.
Yeah.
Can't really guarantee anything in the next 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
And yet they have this sort of wonderful motivation and vision to get the work-life balance right, the quality of life, so that they can also enjoy work is fine. But they don't believe, as a generation, bell curve distribution, they don't believe that it's all about what you do. It's all about who you are.
Yeah. Okay.
And work is a part of that, but it's not the part. It's a part.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they leave work at Friday, 5 o'clock, or leave work, if they're doing shift work or whatever, it's perfectly fine to draw that barrier there, take a deep breath, reset, and go have family time, personal time, play time, interaction time with others, come back to work refreshed. And actually, that is a healthy balance. Now, where that line lies is up to you. Some people, and we see this on Instagram and whatever, it's like, hey, look at me, I got a flash car, I've got this flash. You need to do that as well. And then they get stuck in to do that, I'm going to have to do 6 days a week, and I'm going to have to do this, and I'm going to, and they get stuck in borrowing money when they're already indebted. And if they're not careful, going down the slippery slope of trying to do high quantity, the quality slips a bit. And then the complaints come in 2, 3, 4 years down the line. And you've got to be very careful to get that balance right. So that's the danger I see on, the Instagram promotions sometimes they're not necessarily looking at coming back to people again, the quality, the rapport of that patient relationship. I mean, I look at some composites that are put online. I think, wow, that looks like I couldn't tell that from a natural tooth. I have this slight irritation when I see stained fissures in a composite. I want to go fissure seal them because I still think the bottom of a fissure is better slightly rounded and relatively self-cleansing. And it's great to see all the tertiary fissures put in. It's like, no. And I know from my patients, if I put dark fissures in ceramic crowns, they'll go, oh, what's that dirty brown bit? I thought I was getting this nice, and I don't stain anything now. So it always makes me laugh when I see some people promote, and it is great to say, look at this tooth, I've done it A3 to match the natural dark, horrid dentition, and I've put these little crack lines in, and look at me, dirty fissures that I've put in. Looks just like a natural knackered tooth. It's like, no, make it better, do some whitening, do a bit of bonding, just sit back, look at the whole thing, and give the patient a nicer smile overall.
Guys, as you know, I am the lead tutor of the Hedro Academy Vertical Preparation course. Now, we have put together this beautiful vertical preparation kit, which has been beautifully made by Former Dental Supplies. Simon at Former has kindly agreed to give one lucky winner of this podcast a kit completely free of charge, which retails normally at £220 plus VAT. So all you have to do to win one of these fantastic vertical preparation kits is just give us a like, subscribe to the podcast and share it, and leave a comment below, and we will pick one lucky winner every podcast, and Burkit will be finding itself in your clinic. Okay, so yeah, great guys. The Horacle Burkit by Hedro Academy and Former Dental Supplies. You bring it up social media a little bit here. Now, we had a conversation earlier, didn't we,
Yeah.
about the difference between the generations in terms of my question was to Imaan earlier was, you know, we don't want to be taking risks. We don't want to get sued because we're very scared of getting sued. However, the younger generation of dentists all want to be composite bonding dentists, want to do a line bleach bond, you know?
Not all of us.
No, I was actually quite interested to learn that, because it was a generalization talking to dentists of my age saying, oh, well, all the young dentists now, all they want to do is a line bleach bond. Yeah. And, you know, that was driven by kind of like social media and the Zoomers growing up with social media. So how does social media impact upon dentistry? I personally don't like it, but it's very much part and parcel of your generation. So please fill Tony in, because that was a very interesting conversation that we had about the whole instant gratification. Why is it that young dentists want to do a line bleach bond?
So we had this conversation about with them, and I said it's instant gratification. People want to earn the money quickly to be able to support the lifestyle that they want to live. They want to get things done quicker. So it's like, I want this done. I can do this. I can do composite. So why can't I do composite bonding? Come out of it, get the money that I need to go on that holiday to Bali or whatever it is that you want to do. And I think that,
well, just don't go in school time and it'll be cheaper, folks. You know, we can do a podcast on cheap tips, can't we? And still work qualitatively.
So I was saying that people, instant gratification, they want it, and when they want it is right now. So they want to do what they can do, because it is the hype at the moment, isn't it? Composite bonding, a line bleach and bond is kind of the go-to thing most people are wanting. They'll come into your practice and they'll be asking.
So if you look at your feeds, Instagram, whatever, how full of this sort of thing are they, would you say?
Quite heavily full, I'd say. Mine. I've got a dental Instagram, but I was saying I've never posted because we talk about some trolls and some
worried
and some of the older generation just being a bit super critical, not constructive criticism.
Yeah.
And that
generational differences to them, that would seem crass.
Yeah.
And it's not that one doesn't provide those options for patients, but when it seems to be only about that, then it seems crass. It's almost like, hey, you're forgetting your, pardon the pun, roots. Yeah. You're forgetting the perio, you're forgetting the caries, you're forgetting the prevention. And I hope they're not forgetting it. But, you know, taking a picture of someone's improved plaque score probably ain't going to get that many likes, is it, on Instagram?
But that's an assumption that those old people are making, that we haven't stabilised everything else, right?
That the old people are making.
Yeah.
The older people are making.
Those terrible old people who've ruined the environment, bought the houses for $2,000.
Ruined our lives.
Yeah, and left us all in debt. So again, it's the which goggles you're looking through. Because what you'll probably find is, I don't know, let's say there's a dozen people that give those sort of, shall we say, negative feedbacks.
Yeah.
How many older dentists are there? There's 40,000 odd in the register. Do you see what I mean?
They can hurt.
Of course. As can any comment on social media.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about the Zoomers. And actually, there's another Generation Alpha, that come after the Zoomers. So they're still at school.
Right.
They're still at school.
Oh, Lord. What are we in for?
But their life is online.
Yeah.
Online bullying is massively prevalent.
Yeah.
So when you said you don't like social media, it's a communication tool. People said this when the internet came on, and then they said it when people could have their own mobile phones, not have a wire attached to a wall. Yeah. And so, oh God, anyone can, be mean to you and all this. And it's true. It is sometimes used badly and for bad purposes. Yeah. So there has to be different means of dealing with it. But I don't feel Instagram and stuff is bad. I think sometimes people get stuck in this idea of cosmetic dentistry is somehow superior to any other form of dentistry. And of course, what it is photogenic dentistry that's easy to show on Instagram. Comparing plaque scores and improved perio can be shown, but it's not as glamorous.
This is the thing I say, is that all my work, I try to aim for it to be as aesthetic as possible. That's
exactly.
That's just
what dentistry isn't aesthetic. And frankly, even an amalgam, one's sort of conscious of not having to, or having a little blocker there so the grey don't shine through.
Did you just say amalgam?
I know. Shocks to horror. And you can dentine bond amalgam as well. So it's not as bad as people make out. But the public pressure is for something that looks more natural. Yeah. And it's everything we do has a cosmetic element, like you say. Yeah. So I think what it is if you were talking to your parents, your friends, people say, "Oh, what do you do?" You said, "Well, I'm an NHS dentist and I treat gum disease and tooth decay and anything else I find." It's like, "Oh, right, okay." They probably just ask, "Are you taking new patients?" But it isn't "Ooh, that's glamorous."
Yeah.
Whereas if it's like, "I'm a cosmetic dentist, I'm an implant dentist, I'm I'm super dentist."
Yeah.
And here's my Instagram feed,
Yeah.
or here's my thing to try and prove I'm super dentist.
Yeah.
And they might do some very good work.
Yeah.
But how many are showing their failures? How many are showing
We said
their difficulties?
Every picture is probably about 100 failures
Of
behind
course.
it. Yeah.
So once you realise that, there was a really famous Instagram blogger. I'm sorry, I can't remember her name because I don't know her. But again, she's a Zoomer. And she has something like, I don't know, 3 million followers and all this. And she did a program and asking people, why did you like this picture? Why are you following her? They're like, oh, she looks so glamorous and everything. She then showed how many pictures she took to produce the one. And she says, "No, this is what I really look like. This is what I look like from the side with the lighting here and the reflecting hood there. And, and this is why it looks so, but that isn't normally me." She said, "I had a few spots here and I was trying to hide them and did all this and, and you're like, yeah, that's being human. But of course, we all instinctively want to show our best, be it on holiday photos or any other thing. So if you can put it in the context of, this is just someone showing the very best, and we don't know how many failures they have and all the rest. And of course, it's bragging rights. But once you realise that's what it is, then hopefully you can put it in perspective. The problem is when that sets off others to copy. So the reason this young Instagram person who was very popular did this program was she realised, others are trying to do the same or do more extreme things to get noticed. And that's when it can go into a not good zone. So, so she was showing sort of really why this is not a good thing. And I personally don't think Instagram and social media and everything is a bad thing. It's how one uses it, really. But to say you're a cosmetic dentist when maybe one's got less than, say, 10 years good, broad dentistry experience is probably what some of the older dentists will look at as, well, you could still miss ordinary things because you haven't quite got the experience yet. You're getting better every year, but, and now you're going into the glamorous dentistry and, the Invisaligns and all of this kind of thing. Massive promotion out there. There's a lot of street cred when someone says, "Oh, I'm an implant dentist, I'm a cosmetic dentist, I'm a Invisalign dentist."
Yeah. It's amazing.
And it's like, I'm sorry, we don't have that on the GDC register.
Yeah, but when you said earlier about the whole instant gratification thing, does that sing to the generational differences? Do the Zoomers need instant gratification because of the way they've been brought up?
Yes, because they're more collaborative, they work more in groups, and they need that multi-sourced feedback. Whereas you Generation Xers are, quite confident and competent on your own.
What you've just said there, actually, that is one word which I found more and more and more from my FDs was, well, can I have some feedback on this? I'm just like thinking, man, it was a good amalgam. Just be happy with it. What feedback do you want? And it took me a little while to get my head around that feedback. So that's where it comes from, right?
It's like constant reassurance, really, that they're still on the right track and doing the right thing. And that people are impressed.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm quite still like that. Like I'll go to my principal and I'll, like you said about, getting somebody older to come in and just, if a patient's being a bit like, they don't like, you don't feel like they're fully on board.
Yes.
Just a second pair of eyes to say exactly the same as what you've said can make such a world of difference. And I think that makes a massive difference.
Yes.
I'm going to confess something now live, right? And I can say this now.
You're older than you look, or you're younger than you look?
87.
The surgery was a success. Excellent.
No, because the thing is that a lot of people don't talk about things. And the thing is, I'm talking about this. This is the whole reason for doing this podcast, because I want to talk about these things, And, I'm an implant dentist. Yeah, I have my own implant diploma. And I started out in implant dentistry in 2009. I did my very first course. So I'll be doing it a little while now. And I didn't have a mentor for my first few cases. I just got on with it. That's unthinkable now, isn't it? It's unthinkable to think that you'd be placing implants without a mentor.
GDC. No, I'm joking.
Exactly. Well, that's it. That's the joke.
Yeah, but what I would say to you is...
Well, I'm doing it right now, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like...
without getting into detail, presumably you took another responsible approach. And there were people you could contact if there was an issue.
They were.
And you probably went and watched others or learnt from others. Or
I did a full year-long course. But...
Exactly. So what I'm saying, it wasn't like, I feel like just giving this a go
like me,
today
just picking
and
it
I
up
don't know what I'm doing.
No,
so it's very different.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
So it was a case of, I started out with what I thought was going to be easy, and obviously anything that wasn't easy, then I referred it.
Yeah. What was your first one? Let me guess. Upper premolar.
Of course. Yeah, the upper left 5. Of course, we've got to tackle the upper left 5. So we did the upper left 5, and then that became anteriors, and then, lower posteriors. Eventually, the full arches came. And listen, it's dentistry unmasked, right? So let's talk about it. Then I got really emboldened, and I ended up doing 50 placements within the first 2 years, which for me was pretty good. I know people place a lot more than that. I know there's a lot of people place a hell of a lot less than that.
Well, we're talking quantity versus quality.
Yeah. So then I ended up thinking, right, you know what? I'm gonna tackle that full arch, and that full arch was a disaster.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was an absolute disaster. I did actually leave implant dentistry for about 18 months then.
Okay.
Yeah, but that one case, and it was a disaster, and I could refer it on to I won't mention names, but I referred to the people that trained me to another colleague, and they rectified it for me, and everything was okay. And that's great. And, I lay in bed thinking, first do no harm to the patient. That really made me reevaluate my attitude towards risk, right?
But then doesn't that feel like you left implant dentistry for 18 months there?
Yeah.
I have that fear without even doing that if I do something wrong, if I fuck up in some way, that's going to happen, that I'm going to feel that way. So why would I do something?
But the thing is, I suppose I'm just, again, coming from personal experience, and again, it's maybe a Generation X thing, that there has
being very millennial over there.
Okay.
No, assessing it careful, don't want to make the wrong decision, won't make the decision till I feel it can be right.
And I suppose, so 2 things from that. That failure taught me the most I could have ever learned. It taught me more than reading any textbook. It taught me more than standing with a mentor and having a mentor do it with me. It taught me, it really, really taught me my own limitations and what my glass ceiling, or what my ceiling is, I should say.
A bit of a reality check.
Call it a reality check if you want, but,
but then that's where it comes in. You say that, you said it was a failure, but there's no such thing as failure, it's feedback. That's when we say that feedback, the word feedback, you've learned from that, right? That is the feedback that you've got from it.
Mr. Gen X here is really struggling with that.
I'm struggling with that. I am.
He takes personal responsibility for it.
Yeah.
He's made these decisions, so it's all his responsibility.
Yeah.
And you are both correct, because when you expand your comfort zone, how are you going to get better if you don't expand your comfort zone?
And that's what I struggle with.
And the answer is, you establish something, get settled, till it becomes where you're not thinking about it the next day kind of level. Then you're ready to push on and do the next bit. Now, sometimes people do a big leap, and that would be more baby boomers and Gen X, because it's like, well, let's give it a try. I can always do something else if that happens. And it's not till it scares you that you come back and go, oh, that was scary. I'm going to pause. I'm going to stop. I'm going to whatever. At the other end, generationally, a millennial would go, not only am I going to do a diploma, I'm going to have 2 mentors. I'm going to be really careful, even when I'm doing that first premolar and there's bags of bone, whatever. Yeah. And once they do that first one, and then once they do some others, it's like, okay, I've made the right decision. They'd rather over prepare, but I mean over make themselves safe with extra help and support mechanisms. Whereas we're a little bit more, I'm willing to try something and take a risk, because you'd already done that and had success. And that was fine, because it must have just been within your comfort zone. You went sideways, you pushed a bit more, you did more, you went sideways. But a full arch is a different thing, isn't it, to planning singles or several singles. And that's where you found your threshold, and it scared you a bit. But because you care, you step back. If you didn't care, you think, I'll do another one, and maybe then harm multiple patients. And that's where I think people go wrong. So the feedback is actually a lot of self-feedback as well, self-analysis. I always say when my young dentists go through foundation training, it's like, you are now running your own foundation training scheme.
Yeah.
You're your own, observer. You're your own, how far can I push this? But you still need to push, but at a pace that suits you, and everyone's going to be different, so don't worry about that. You scared yourself slightly, came back, did the responsible thing. And I don't know, have you gone back and done another full arch? Or have you
I'm doing routinely.
There you go. But do you see how that made you sit back, reevaluate, do some more learning, get some support in place, do the next? And that first one will be even more scary because it's been a while and all the rest. But once you've done it, then the relief is, okay, my comfort zone, my competency zone has now expanded to embrace that. But people listening to this podcast, there's going to be ones that have perforated, doing endo. There'll be ones that have
I hate endo.
break teeth as they're taking them out. There's going to be all sorts of separated instruments, you name it. There will be things that don't go to plan. But as long as you can learn, reflect, and actually improve from it in a controlled way, then you're okay. And I would love to see on Instagram how I dealt with something that didn't quite go right. Yeah. And certainly for those generations, that would be like gold, liquid gold. Because anyone can handle success. Hey, I did this whitening and bonding and the patient was dead happy and here's my 5-star review. Yeah, big whoop. Who can't handle success when it goes right? What do you do when it doesn't quite go to plan? What do you do that the patient you bent over backwards for in an appointment suddenly makes a complaint that came out of the blue and you didn't know what to do? Now who's going to sort of post that unless it's anonymous sometimes? Because it's not a nice thing, is it? But it's stuff we're all going to have to learn to cope with, and that is the normal part of dentistry. You just don't want it happening too frequently to put you off. So that's why if you go at your pace and work in a practice or a clinic or an environment where there is support there and you collaborate, communicate, the older generations, the younger generations listen and understand each other. You may still work differently, but now you understand each other and there's less barriers. And the younger generations can learn from the older generations' experience and how to get out of trouble as well. But the old generations can learn from the younger generations how to utilise IT, communication, marketing, and how they should collaborate more. Because the older dentists will be a little bit, I won't say secretive, but insular. They're used to working alone. They're not used to sharing and all that. The other end of the spectrum, that's all they do. That's how they work. That's how they think.
Do you think either of us, if we were in the same, if me being a millennial and you being a Gen X, would get to the same goal at the same time?
No, you will still, because your background and culture will still dominate. Yeah. But you'll adapt. Okay. You'll adapt. So when you understand why he thinks things or does things a certain way, and he understands why you think and do things a certain way, when you come to do something that's a joint project or working together or whatever it is, you will then make the best of it. Because actually the best teams are multi-generational. The best teams, the most successful teams are multi-generational. Because now, it's a bit like saying, I don't know, a soccer team has defenders and attackers and a goalkeeper, and they've all got different skills. They've all got different ways of seeing things. You put them together as a team and you've got a bit of harmony and understanding there. Wow, you can beat anyone. What was the year Leicester City like? Won the cup and stuff, and they just panned all the top teams. One player of, I don't know, Arsenal or Chelsea or whatever was worth more than the whole Leicester City squad. But what they did was play together as a team, despite being either different ages or different positions or different views, because they understood each other and communicated that. So it's okay to be different. I think people get hung up on, we've got to be the same. No, that's boring. If you're all the same, you're just like robots. Yeah. So you've got different skills in a team. They come together in synergy. Yeah. And if you can harness that, you will have the most powerful, it doesn't matter, dental team, business, successful project.
Yeah, amazing. Guys, thank you both today for coming and talking together. I mean, this is the reason why I'm doing this, is because I really need to understand people. I really need to understand why dentistry is shifting like it's shifting, why there is so much dissatisfaction with young dentists, with the profession, and why the older gits like me just don't get it. So, I'm learning. I'm learning.
I think it was quite an eye-opener for myself as well, from yourself, Tony, just to be able to see and understand a bit more about how and your generation work and stuff like that. Because for somebody who's younger, it's quite hard to see. You would just see you as like the cynical older people in a sense. So it's nice to see where some of that comes from, how your traits come from, where they come from, and why they come from there. So it's really, really inspirational for me as well.
No, it's good, and it's normal. This is the thing, it's normal. It's just frustrating if one doesn't understand the hows and whys.
Yeah.
And the more you understand, the more you can adapt and then actually utilise differences to get a better outcome together. That's the smart way for teams to work.
Yeah.
Smart way for businesses to work and so on. And I think that's what the really big businesses outside of dentistry and so on, when they realise that, they then get different teams, generations together, and they explore this, and then they come out of it far more communicative and collaborative, which is a good thing. And to have the wisdom of many decades and the enthusiasm of youth together, you can do a lot. You can do a lot. So, yeah, don't be worried about generational differences. They're real, they're there, appreciate them, but communicate well so that they don't become a barrier.
Yeah, $1 million question. And I know
Go on.
Can't answer it in a sentence. Where does that leave NHS dentistry?
If we were organising NHS dentistry, it could be the most successful national-based health service in the world, where the teams that work in it had the highest job satisfaction. Look at all the nurses striking, the ambulance workers striking. Now the junior doctors, they've gone on strike. Why? Do you think it's just about the money? Do you really? We know it isn't. It's their working conditions, job dissatisfaction, lack of recognition, appreciation, help, career pathways. More and more crap's just dumped on them.
Yeah.
And it's out of frustration. This is the first strike nurses have done in 100 years. That has not been done lightly. And it is a massive, massive frustration of not being appreciated at work and having a constructive working ethos. And the managers are just constantly putting pressure on them to work in understaffed, wards, and patients are not being cared the way they like to care for them. And they go home mentally shattered as well as physically. And they know they just can't keep doing that. And so they're doing the opposite you should do. So in that sense, they are dooming themselves. But it's not doomed because of the idea of having a national health service that's patient-based. That's a great idea. Resource it, help the workers to have job satisfaction, help them to be well supported in there and have good communications and understanding. But again, it's very hierarchical, up and down, and unfortunately it's falling apart. And until they change the system, it will continue to fall apart. And it's as sad and as simple as that.
Is that on the horizon? Is change on the horizon, to your knowledge?
Well, there's a general election in 2024. So if they don't do something about it now, they'll change government and see if the next one can or will do something about it. And if they change government and they don't do it about it, then, you might be talking societal change.
This UDA system, though, this UDA system has been here since 2006.
Oh, it was past its sell-by date, 2008. So this is where it's gone wrong.
Yeah. Well, guys, once again, thank you very, very much for joining us today. And, we'll see you all soon.
Cheers.
Brilliant.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.